challenge, join me for downward dog on elbows, which for those of you who do yoga is effectively a dolphin pose. So one of my favourites. I find it so hard because my shoulders are tight, but it's so good for me. So very quickly, this is how the downward dog on elbows looks. So we're putting our hands, wrists, elbows and shoulders all in alignment, and I'll be strict with that in a second and show you that from a slightly different angle. And we're just taking our legs up, but I don't want you to think too much about trying to ground your ankles. So if I focus on grounding my ankles, which I'm not warmed up enough today to even do that, but if I was focusing on my ankles, I'm not going to be thinking so much about my shoulders. So I want you to keep a light bend in your knees and just keep your ankles off the floor. And what you're trying to do is to push, and in fact, for risk of my breast falling out, I don't think it's going to happen. I might just take off my top. So what we're trying to do here is to push backwards. So we're like in our forearms, they stay on the floor, and our shoulders want to push back because we're then really creating that shoulder flexion. So can you understand there how what I'm promoting is the same as what we were doing in those previous exercises? So if I focus too much on my feet, I'll be more likely then to come forward in this kind of strange plank thing, and my shoulders are further ahead of my elbows, whereas I want to push the shoulders behind the elbows. So please don't worry too much about your lower body and what that looks like. I just want you to get, and you can see that I'm terrible at this, because my shoulders are so tight. We have got a little bit of boob out there, sorry. Because my shoulders are so tight, I can't get my legs straight and stuff. This is like, you know, it highlights to me that my shoulders have got work to do. And I'm trying to tilt my pelvis forwards. So I don't want the pelvis tucking under, so I'm rounded through my lower back. I'm trying to bend my knees and tilt that pelvis forwards, and that's going to get my hips engaged, and it's going to help open up my shoulders even more, okay? So, I'll put my t-shirt back on. I don't think you would have seen anything there, but I don't think I even have any male subscribers yet to the studio, so I don't mind if some ladies see a bit of my boob, okay? So, with the hand position, most of you are going to come into this and want to have your elbows wider than shoulder width. Can you see there how that's not shoulder width, okay? This is tight shoulders trying to compensate. As you do the position, it's almost like you want your hands to be slightly wider than your elbows, because that will really make sure that you're not opening them up. So can you see from that angle, imagine that I'm going to go into it from there, the hands, the wrists, the elbows and the shoulders are shoulder width apart, which is more narrow than most people think. It's exactly the same principle as what we're thinking about with our legs. But with our legs, it's more likely that people, you know, their feet are doing that. With this type of position with the upper body, it's more likely that the elbows want to do that abduction kind of compensation rather than staying there, so that we're keeping you in shoulder flexion and shoulder flexion alone. So when we do this, we're really spreading our fingers wide and using our fingers, our palms and our forearms to push down and push forwards, as that's going to help us kind of push our shoulders back. I'm going to set a timer here for 2 minutes. That might be completely out of reach for you. That's absolutely fine. Work towards it. You might be able to do 20 seconds today. You might be able to do 40 seconds another day. Just build up to these things. It doesn't matter. Most important thing, you're not in pain and you're maintaining that steady control of your breath. So my body might be shaking as I do this because I find this really hard, but my breath is always extremely calm. And if I notice that I'm holding my breath, I stop the exercise. I'll do child's pose or something for a few minutes. So just make sure you're maintaining that breath. And don't worry too much about how your lower body looks. We're really trying to get that sensation of you pushing through your forearms and your hands to open the shoulders out. So do what you can. Remember the alignment through the hands. 3, 2, 1, off we go. Spreading the fingers nice and wide. Head is nice and relaxed. There's no tension through your neck. Ankles are off the floor.
because that's going to help you tilt your pelvis forwards anteriorly to get a little bit of hip flexor engagement. And then when you're there, you're pushing into your fingers, your hands and your forearms. They're pushing onto the floor as the shoulders move back, and then we're moving into strong, loaded shoulder flexion. Keeping your head nice and steady, keeping the breath nice and steady, making sure that the hands and the elbows don't start moving. So the longer you're here, they might start trying to compensate. You have to really make sure you're like locked into place. We're nearly a minute in, by the way. Breath stays nice and heavy. And when you feel like you've got that kind of point where you can't get any more shoulder flexion, just you're restricted, you're just going to hold it there and work the hands and forearms harder, maintaining the breath. And then you might want to try and straighten your knees, but straightening the knees for most people will then result in pelvic flexion and lower back flexion. So I'm not going to do that because I'm focusing on my hips working and the pelvis driving forwards, not how straight my knees are. Keep breathing. 30 seconds left if you're staying with me for the 2 minutes. My whole body's shaking. I love this exercise. Ten seconds left. Trying to open the armpit up as much as possible. That's really what flexion, shoulder flexion is all about, is opening the armpit up.
And relax. Good job, and a big well done